Welcome back. We are 6 weeks away from the upper house election, and boy, this has caused a lot of trouble with the opposition camps. They filed a no-confidence motion over the week. Michael, you're watching this too. Big impact?
Absolutely zero impact.
Okay.
Okay, if we're talking purely about the chances of Abe getting voted out of office by a no-confidence motion, zero impact.
Right.
And this was a gesture that was done the day before the Diet session was closed. And normally that kind of behavior is actually quite disruptive because under normal circumstances, the administration is rushing, trying to finish a few more bills.
Every day, every moment is important.
Is important. And then when the opposition tosses out a no-confidence motion asking for the government to fall, that means that those hours are lost because a no-confidence motion must be dealt with first. Mm-hmm. And then they have a debate about the state of the union, the state of Japan, about the leadership, and they have to waste time on that. But as we know, the Abe administration basically cleared out the calendar.
Sure.
And the Abe administration was going to the final day with virtually nothing left to do. Mm-hmm. So when the opposition did toss out the no-confidence motion, it didn't have the disruptive effect that they normally do. So instead, it was pure theater.
Right.
And when you have pure theater, then it becomes something pleasant and interesting to look at as opposed to an annoyance and an aggravation. Mm-hmm. So while it didn't have any political impact because the opposition's motion was immediately voted down once the speeches had ended, still, it had, for theatrical purposes, it helped highlight the opposition was still there.
Right.
And that's an issue that's going to have to be dealt with by the opposition in its buildup over the next 6 weeks for the House of Councillors election, which Mr. Abe yesterday finally said it's going to happen on July the 10th. It's always been a question up until now. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has to set the date, and finally yesterday he did so in his press conference ending the Diet session.
Don't you think, it's rather rare for the opposition to file a no-confidence motion. It happens very rarely. They have to really be up to here. Don't you think this gesture was more to throw cold water on the end of the G7 or the fabulous accolades that he was receiving as a result of Hiroshima?
The Hiroshima speech of Obama? I think that's quite true because he certainly came out of both of those things with a lot of momentum. Mm-hmm. And there was an attempt to somehow throw sand in the gears. It may have done so, it may not have. But they do have two salient points that they want to make. The first is that indeed, by his announcement of not only when he's going to hold the election, but also that prior to the election, he's going to delay the rise in the consumption tax. The opposition wants to say that the election now is about his management of the economy. Right. And he himself has admitted that his management isn't good. That's what they read out of no consumption tax rise until October 2019. Aha, Abenomics has failed. Mm-hmm. Say it, Prime Minister Abe. Right. Say it. And that's what the no confidence motion was. It was a challenge for him.
It was almost a catch-22, wasn't it? I mean, if he accepts their argument that Abenomics has failed, it paints him in a bad way. If he accepts their argument that he must have a lower house election at the same time, he loses it there too. So they were kind of trying to paint him into the corner.
They were trying to paint him to the corner, and he refused to allow himself to be put there.
Well, did he pay any attention at all?
Well, he certainly showed up, and so did all of the cabinet, so that they could, after the motion fails, all stand up, smile, and take a big bow saying, thank you for rejecting the no confidence motion. You clearly have confidence in us. Yes. And by the way, tomorrow we all
we will see you at the polls.
We will see you at the polls. And that's true. The second point that they wanted to make with this was that they are unified. It was a joint four-party no confidence motion, including the Communist Party. And those four parties have indeed done something that is absolutely historic, which is in the single-member districts. There are 32 districts in the House of Councillors election which have, in every electoral cycle, only one person being elected out of that district. Those single-member districts have until now featured an LDP candidate, a major opposition candidate, and then in a spoiler role,
right.
the Communist Party. The Communist Party has traditionally always run a candidate in every district, whether it's House of Representatives or House of Councilors. And traditionally, political analysts have said, they're bleeding off 5 to 10% of the progressive vote so that no matter what happens, the LDP is going to win. It's going to take a massive societal shift, which we did see in the years after Koizumi was prime minister. We saw the shift, and everyone committed themselves to this new idea. We need a two-party system. We need a second party that can win. Let's vote for this party. We're not so sure they can run the country, but we got to get out of the LDP. Okay, we're past that stage in terms of the electorate. The electorate doesn't necessarily feel that anymore. And so it's going to be all the more harder for an opposition party candidate to win. Mm-hmm. But the communists have finally said, we're not going to mess things up anymore, and we're going to cooperate. So the no confidence motion was, after the Hokkaido 5 election, the second opportunity to show that the communists are working together with everyone in the opposition. And that's the gateway to this new situation where the LDP candidates in the single-member districts will be meeting a single unified opposition candidate. There might be a few independents who might mess up some certain districts. There might be Osaka Ishin candidates that will serve in spoiler roles in the Osaka region. But for the most part, nationwide, the Communist Party, which has been basically a go-it-alone party, is finally joining into an anti-Abe coalition.
This has never happened. I mean, nothing even close to this has happened. And one of the salient, really strong points about the Communist Party is, number one, is they are funded, and number two, they're very well organized. And for them to be able to share that with the other opposition parties, I mean, that is something that the LDP needs to think about when they go up to elections.
They have, and to Abe's credit, he and his people have thought about it, and they're clearly extremely cautious. Because this has never happened before. They got a scare in the Hokkaido 5 election. It was much closer than they thought it should be. Mm-hmm. They thought that their LDP candidate, because it was Machimura's seat, a former faction leader, they thought that he should at least have a commanding victory, if not a landslide. Instead, it was way too close with a person who'd just been picked and supported by all the four.
Right.
Now they're going to be facing it in every single member district, and they're going to have to deal with that, which is why I think Mr. Abe has gone against the idea of having a simultaneous House of Reps election.
Right.
It's caution, caution, caution. We've never been here before. Let's see how this turns out. Let's not put all of our marbles, both our 2/3 majority in the House of Reps.
We're not going to gamble that.
We're not going to gamble that in order for some kind of feel-good super victory. Sure, it has happened in the past, but we've never had an opposition like this before.
It's funny because, he had so much momentum going forward, even just a couple of weeks ago, way before the G7 summit. And now, in his press conference last night, he's projecting that they will kind of break even in the election. This is where we're going to be going. And that seems to be a far cry from we're going to get 2/3 here, too.
You're going to get 2/3, and we're going to be able to change the Constitution. Constitutional change, he was asked about it by, of course, the Asahi Shimbun in the press conference, and he just made the question go away because he realizes that realistically, he will have to have not only the Komeito on his side, but minor right-wing parties like Nihon no Kokoro, the heart of Japan, and of course Osaka Ishin, which will be controlled by Hashimoto Toru, who is at best a volatile individual. Right. And that's probably the nicest thing you can say about him. He probably doesn't see that as a very inviting prospect. So he's set his goals very low.
Sure.
And half of the seats that are up, there are 121 seats that are up for election this time. He says, if we win 61, that's fabulous. Last time they had an election 3 years ago, they won 76. 61 is a very low mark. And they're certainly going to get closer to the 76 than to the 61. So he's set the bar really low, and he's going to get over it. So it's like a steeplechase where the steeplechases are 10 centimeters off the ground.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's setting expectations low. That could be a lack of confidence that he's really going to exceed that. Or it could be like a tactic that when he does win more than that, see what I did, rah, rah, let's hold a lower house election next week.
Either way, it's covered by this decision that he made to put out some kind of goal that is absurdly low. They used to set up, that's one of the true innovations of Abe, is to constantly set very low goals electorally. They used to set rather ambitious goals in order to make the party members really enthusiastic about showing up at the polls and voting for the party. But nowadays,
because we're in a dog race.
We're going to fight for this.
Yes.
We are fighting for you. And Weber said that the goal of every politician should be to fight. But this is not a fighting group. This is a very cautious, very conservative with their political capital group. And they say, oh yeah, we might get 61 seats, maybe.
Right.
That's very, very far cry from pounding on the lectern and saying we must have this number of seats so that we can go forward with constitutional revision.
Can we talk a little bit about the Japan Communist Party? Because I think between now and Election Day, there's going to be a lot of jockeying. I mean, we need to watch this issue pretty carefully. How will the Japan Communist Party portray itself to the electorate, and how will it mesh with the other opposition parties? I mean, they've got to be online with the themes and the policies.
That's one of the things that seems to have come out of this move toward a broader alliance involving the communists in the opposition.
Whatever we do, we need to beat the administration.
We need to beat the administration, which shows an attitude of realism that, frankly, that the communists have never had before. Before, they've been all ideals, all fighting for the poor, fighting for the Article 9, the peace constitution, and we're adamant and we're radical.
There's been a sea change. And
instead, they've calculated somehow that an appearance of cooperation, even if it's pathetic and hopeless, which, in my opinion, the 32 seats will not really be affected by the fact that the communists are voting along with everybody else.
But it sets a precedent for cooperation, collaboration.
It does. It sets a wonderful precedent.
It's huge.
And it seems to be, from the few data points that we have, that since the coordination that led to the Hokkaido election, and then the merger of the DPJ, the Democratic Party of Japan, with the rump Japan Innovation Party, which brought conservatives into the DP, that the opposition, the ones who have really profited from all the maneuvers that have happened are the communists. Their numbers have gone up because of this cooperative stance. Right. Whereas the DPJ's numbers, after it incepted all these conservatives from the JIP, their numbers have gone down. So that in the coalition, the communists will be even more influential and powerful because they will be delivering far more votes than this supposed more centrist, more broad-based party that they've allied themselves with.
In a rare move, the Japan opposition parties formed a coalition and filed a no-confidence motion against the Prime Minister and the current administration. This is a big deal. It carries lots of implications for the next 6 weeks leading up to the upper house election. This is exciting news, a great development. We're going to continue to watch it. You should too.